Good morning and happy Saturday to you guys. And welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. If you guys are just now tuning in this morning, do me a favor if you haven't already. Head over to my YouTube channel. It's called the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And we have a really great guest for you guys today. We're going to be talking about something. We're going to be talking about grief, but in a different way. Now, before we get started, I bring this amazing guest up here. This is for educational purposes only. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'd be happy to answer them as we go along. Now, today's guest, like I said, we're going to be talking about grief in a different way. And the question I would like to ask, how do you grieve something that you've never had? My guest is here to talk about that exact thing. And without further ado, please welcome Denise to the show. Denise, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Tony?
I am doing well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here for this conversation.
Yes. We've been having a great conversation.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to be in for a treat today. Now, before we get started, Denise, tell people who you are and where you're from.
I'm a speaker and an author, and I'm from Trenton, New Jersey, but I live currently in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. See, you guys, she's from my neck of the woods. I've been trying to tell you, we connected all across the board, right?
Something like that, for sure.
Right. You know, she's a hoot too, man. So you guys, please put your questions and comments up in there. A different type of grief today. And she's going to be the one who helps lay it out. She has in-depth experience. So Denise, before we get into the meat of it, tell people about who you were in the beginning pieces of your journey.
Sure. So my story starts out as I am sorry, I've got my email up, which is terrible.
That's okay.
My story is this. I was born to two drug addicted teens. I grew up in a very abusive environment on my maternal side. I didn't quite know my paternal side at all. I spent time between kinship care and my mother had custody back and forth. And so during those times, there was a lot of abuse. And if you're thinking the worst, I felt that. I've experienced that. And so I talk when I do speeches, I actually talk to a lot of teachers because my home life and my school life was two separate lives. And I kind of got raised by the teachers, counselors, and coaches that were in my life who helped me get through these abuses that went on at home. And they became these temporary moms to me, which is something that when we talk about grief, that's the one thing that I always wanted. And I share that with a lot of other survivors, childhood abuse survivors that I've been in contact with. And there's this relatability as far as emotion and things that we've felt in that aspect of grieving something that you've never had. So again, my story is somewhat where you have these hopes, dreams, and stories that you put in your head about what things could be and how things could go when you're trying to navigate a world where none of that is true in your reality world.
Man, and I mean, you have your parents, but they're not really there.
No,
and that's what I mean. Like, like how do you grieve something? What does that look like? How do you grieve something that you've never had? Do you mean?
And so my I have limited contact with my father, and I have no contact with my mother. As a matter of fact, we have a no contact order. So yeah, that throws a lot of twists into things because it took me till I was in my almost 40 to have the courage to separate that and so be on my own. Which there's some healing in that too, but the grief of not having the thing that you wanted the most. And I will say, because of the abuses I have, I've not always been very comfortable with men. Though I love my husband. We've been together for 23 years, so he is, obviously one that I am very comfortable with. But women, just that desire to have a mom, like a real mom, where it's what you should be. Like, I'm a mom, and everything that I'm giving my kids is what I wished I had myself.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Now, see, that makes perfect sense. You
Yeah.
know, when did you start putting names to what you were feeling?
When I was
Right.
4,
When you was 4.
when I was 4, I
Wow.
I remember it because I would meet a woman, and she would start to check off my mom boxes. Now, I didn't understand that until obviously I was probably, grade school, and then for sure, like when I was 12, that started like to really hit me. And
Mhm.
it was this, immediate connection. They didn't even have to talk. It was like, you saw them, and there was this something that, you got these butterflies in your belly, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's what I wish I had. And so it was these things, and you still had hope, right? But at the same point, as you grow older and older, it just gets harder and harder. But yeah, at 4 was my first time. I remember I was in preschool, and it was a teacher, and she, you know, took care of me while I fell down, and I couldn't put it into words, but I remember this, this just feeling of a wishful feeling.
And see, I love that you said that, a wishful feeling, because I
Yeah,
know there's people out there, and you talk to many people
I
that have
do.
gone through something similar, right? And you're helping them navigate this world of feeling, and I'm just adding some words to it, because I know I'm putting myself in a situation to where if I was in there, I would feel abandoned. I would have trust issues. You know, I would have I would have just all of these worries, a sense of shame, a sense of guilt.
Mm.
Why do I feel this way? Because that anger would come out, right? And
Oh
it's
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah. See, so yeah,
yeah,
unspoken words right there. I'm like, so I'm trying to look at it from a perspective of being on the inside and trying to, and going through those emotions, especially as a young child, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly that. There is that abandonment issue, and you wonder if you're good enough. And as you're younger, at a younger age, it was like, how perfect can I be? And again, remember, I'm separating myself from home and school. So at a younger age, I was this good kid, and trying really hard, and thought, if I'm good enough, somebody is going to come and take me and, rescue me. And
Mhm.
then when you get into middle school, then those happy thoughts turn to like just frustrated that you didn't have it. And I'll tell you this too. This is really interesting, for again, something that is not talked about. Um, for me personally, there were women that had come into or in my life at a younger age, and when I there was one woman, she was my neighbor. Different. I had a babysitter, and she was awesome. She gave me this safe home. She was like really a mom, and even to this day, like I look at her and I want my relationship with my daughter to be the same as she has with her daughter.
Mhm.
But I
Okay.
had this woman who lived across the street, and at a young age I babysat. Back in the 80s, you didn't have this whole, oh, you have to be this age or whatever. And I got like the butterflies in my stomach, and I called her mom. And when I went home, and it was like this endearing thing, when I was over there, and I said, Mom at home, I never saw her again. I wasn't allowed to see her again. So, and it was put in my head that I was too much, that that's not okay, that people are going to leave if you say those things. Um, so that abandonment issue started there. And so when I got to middle school, I was still like, you have this wishful feeling and hopeful feeling, but you got to be really careful. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? You have to be really careful of what you say, what you do. And then that good kid, who's hoping and wishing someone can rescue her, start to get angry because it's not happening and nobody's seeing you. So
Yeah.
that strong desire, that wishful thinking, that hurt that nothing is happening, and that hurt that you're not good enough, or people leave you because of your desire.
Yeah, definitely. Now I can relate to that on a personal level as well. Abandonment, people leaving me. Unfortunately, I got used to it.
Yeah.
I just got used to it. Whenever people used to come around, I made it a point not to get connected to them. Even nowadays, I'm just like, it doesn't matter,
Hmm.
like whatever. I'm just going to enjoy my time with you, and when it's time for you to go, it's whatever, right? I enjoy your time,
Yeah.
right? Um, but now I say it that way for the simple fact of my reality is maybe a little bit different from other people's reality. And what I mean by that is that I realize that I'm the seasonal one. I'm the seasonal
Mm.
one. I switch people like the seasons. I may be
Oh.
there for your winter. I may not be there for your fall.
Hmm.
I may be there for your summer. I may not be there for your spring. But it depends on the individual and what they need from me
Hmm.
and where they're at in their season is where I'm there. So I'm known as, a lot of people will call me a lone wolf. They will call me a traveler, but I'm so used to my path just being what it is
Yeah.
that I know now not to get, emotionally attached to things or people or places, right? Because I changed them so much.
Hmm.
Even with my parents and everything at an early age, I left,
Mm.
right? And my sister, like all of my family, I left. It's only because I didn't understand. So I look at it from that perspective. That's what I said. I look at it from just a different perspective of non-attachment.
Yeah.
It didn't pay for me to let people get attached to me because I don't want to hurt anyone. Lord knows I don't want to hurt anyone. I've
Oh,
gone
yeah.
through my fair share of trauma and I've had to heal from that
Yeah.
as well. Whereas on the other end, you're wishing for that connected,
Yeah.
that community, that mom, that parent, and things like that. And so I guess the question I would ask is, how did that affect you growing up? We talked about this before, that anger, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you said something that had me dying. Miss Little Fighter over there. I'm just gonna fight you.
Oh, I did. No, that is so true. So I was just so frustrated. And it's really interesting. So I talk about this, we've talked about this, like this grief of, and everybody handles grief differently. And there's
Mhm.
so many different levels of grief. And I never talked about the grief of not having a mom. Like I thought I was the only one. And then finding out that there are so many others who share that same feeling, and we've all kind of dealt with it in different ways. And
Right.
so I in middle school, yeah, no, I'll say middle school because I was a good kid in elementary. But middle school kids are assholes, and I was one of them. Like I was absolutely one of them. I started out okay. Um, but the thing was is that I had this counselor who I just reconnected with like literally 3 weeks ago, and I'd been trying to connect with her for so many years because she was the person who tried to rescue me by calling social services, and gave me, because of that, it gave me courage and the voice to be able to just put a tiny piece of, I wrote a letter on this social worker's piece of paper that I said, please help me, I'm very scared. And then they disappeared. Like they never came back. My grandmother and my mother were very good at to make sure I was never going to be taken. And so but going back like middle school with this counselor, when I first met her, she hit off all these boxes. And so you would get called down because of your home life. I mean, my elementary school gave them a heads up about my troubled home life, and I would go down. And in the beginning it was, you look forward to go down, you're getting called all the time, not all the time but enough. I didn't really talk about the home life. Again, that goes into the issues of trauma and being taught things and being convinced things. So you just keep quiet. But it started to fade, that time that I kept getting called down, but I figured something out. My anger. So everything that was happening at home, I would get so frustrated that I would come to school and I would start these arguments and fights. Back in the 80s, we didn't have social media. We met you outside.
Oh
And I
yeah.
met a lot of people outside. Yeah. And I met a lot of people outside. I'm not proud of it, but I met a lot of people outside. And so I would just use that anger. But then something happened. I realized that as I'm using that anger outside and I'm coming into school and I'm having these arguments, well, now I'm getting called down to her office a lot. And so there's my opportunities of having this mom fill-in, right? So my two separate lives, my life of just being angry that no one is coming, and then trying to catch and hold on to something that no one knows about. You know what I mean? So it's this I don't it's not really cat and mouse game. It's just this two lives that are separated by, a wishful thinking and an anger of reality. And so so it was I definitely took out a lot, just the hurt of not having something I definitely wanted. And so I didn't realize then that was a grieving type of reaction. At least that's how I can look at it. And when I talk to other childhood abuse survivors, we kind of had that same relatable feeling. So our stories are all different and we process things different, but our emotions were kind of that way. It was like, your grief came out in anger and your hope came out in these moments that no one knew about.
Okay.
I don't know how to, yeah.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it before. It's like a cat and mouse.
Yeah.
Right? You're chasing that life of feeling wanted.
Oh yeah.
Of
That's
feeling connected to someone, right?
Yeah.
And so I can definitely understand where that analogy comes from, because it's constantly running from you. You're constantly chasing it, but now you figured out a way, right, to get it without nobody knowing it. So if I do, it's
right.
It's like if I go out and start a cause arguments and fights, I can go and see her.
Mm-hmm.
I can go and be around her.
Yeah, and it's funny because in my book is called it's the 30-second moments and the women who raised me. And it was about these little moments that I had a connection with a teacher, a counselor, a coach that went unnoticed by them, but to me it was like encapsulated everything that I wanted in that moment. I heard there's a keynote speaker, her name is Jess Ekstrom, and she said people will hear what they need to hear in that moment. And so it's interesting to find that. So these women gave me something different. So you talked about wanted. I had another teacher after the counselor that said something to me that made me feel wanted, and that hope was alive again. So every time I felt something, I got this hope. And what's interesting about that is every time I came really close to possibly having that, I got scared because I wasn't used to, I was afraid to try to survive in normal because all I knew was chaos. And so this, every time I had met a teacher and I had these experiences, when the time ended and the dream didn't come true, I was hurt and I was grieving. If you can hear my dogs.
It's all good.
It's all good. But I was hurting and I was so sad because it was like I was, like you said, abandonment. This, hope and wishful thinking that never came true. And so each time, each woman that I left, now I gathered things from them. I am the mom I am today. I am the woman I am today because of those small moments and the lessons I learned, the feelings. It's more the feelings that I had during those little moments, which helped me to become who I am. But every time I would go to the next year, I would hurt for that person that I won't see again. So, there's two things that you go through. You go through this grieving of not being able to see someone that you saw, but then you also hurt and are sad for the big picture of what you want and you don't have. And so, and it's interesting that today is the day we're doing this because tomorrow is Mother's Day. And the grief of Mother's Day is one of the hardest that I'm a mom and I love my kids. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, celebrate that, you know, you have these kids and you have this life. And I'm not putting anything like to the side and saying how appreciative I am of that and how much wonderful thing. But that grief comes up every Mother's Day. And I mean, to the point where you don't know how to handle it because you've never had it. So, so I reflect back to all these women, and every time I reflect back, I get hurt again, not because, those feelings are so ingrained in me and I love them and I'm appreciative of them. And I'm connected with a couple of the women now. And I'm just reminded of those moments that they had given to me, but they're not that. And, they're in my life and people will say, oh, you have that. And again, one of the appreciative things is that they are in my life and they're an adult friendship now. So there isn't that same, wishful thinking, you've grown from that. So that's done and over with. I love the fact that I can actually be friends with them and just, be able to share my successes and say, hey, but there's that reminder of the grief of not having it. And so, you'll have people say, like I have some of them and I love them. And they're like, I always said the hardest thing for me not having a mom is being able to call somebody and just have coffee, call them and say, hey, can we talk over the phone, have coffee? I don't live near any of them. I'm down in Virginia. They're up in New Jersey. Right. Or one of the things that has been hard for me too, and this is another shareable thing with others, is when the world falls apart, right? I have this beautiful life. I have the incredible husband. I have these incredible kids. And so my life is rich in that aspect. But when you think about everything, and my daughter knows this, is like, if the world collapsed around you, you don't have someone to go home to. You don't have that person to go to if you have nothing and no one. Right. And again, I'll say this. There's, these women, I've had a few of them say, no, you're going to come here. No, like you're going to be here. You're going to be here. And they've been, that, I don't want to say mother figure, but they've been there. But the difference is that I'm not theirs. And as much as I love them and they would do anything for me, at the end of the day, I'm not in their family photos. I'm not in their, gatherings when they, having family gatherings. So as wonderful as it is that I would think, okay, I do have somewhere to go. Like my babysitter, she's like, nope, you're coming here. And I would do that, right? I would do that. I mean, but at the end of the day, there's still that hurt that you don't have someone for yourself. Right. So okay. It's this constant. And especially like I said, with Mother's Day, it's, and this is something not talked about. And I thought I was the only one feeling this hurt and saying, how do I even get through it? Because I have nothing to look back on. Although I did say something in this podcast that I'm like, that is really interesting. I guess I have something a little bit to look back on all those, the women who gave me those, connected with me in those moments. But then it comes back to the reality of, that's great. It's past, I'm not there anymore. And I still grieve the one thing, the one person.
Totally understood. Because I think there's a, that craving is from the person who birthed you. Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's, when you've grown up in an environment like that, you're like, hey, yeah, I got all these individuals, but I think there's a sense of reality of, like you said, I'm not theirs, and they can leave at any given time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so why can't I have this? So the question, why can't I have this from you? Why are you this way? Now, how was it not? I mean, because your dad was doing the same things, right? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Drug,
Yeah.
alcoholic, you know, and I can only assume a hint of narcissism inside of that as well.
You know what? It's interesting about my father is I have a level of respect for him because he has never denied any of his wrongdoings. Like
Okay.
he has never been one to say, oh, I didn't do that or I didn't do that. He is very clear as to saying, I'm sorry, I did do that. I'm sorry, I did do that. Um,
Okay.
and I will say this, it was best probably that he wasn't in my life because of where he was in his life.
Okay.
And I didn't have a relationship with him until I was 19. And so from 19 on, and I talked to him more often years ago, and in the past couple of years, it's just been hit or miss. Um, but I will say that my mother is a narcissist. And when you had said about wishing you had that from her, I will tell you this. I don't wish that. I wish
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
from the beginning that I was adopted, or not everybody agrees with this, and this is just my personal, I for everything that I went through, I wish I was aborted. And a lot of people say, "Oh, how can you do that because you have kids and everything?" It's not about that. Like I love my kids. However, I would never want to go through the things that I had gone through to get to where I am today. Never. And I never would wish that on anyone.
I
So
can
that,
understand that.
yeah, so that
Yeah, I can
hurt.
understand that.
That hurt was even deeper because I didn't want her to be my mother. I never looked at it and I'm telling you, like from when I was little, that
Mm-hmm.
I wish she was different. I wish she was, no, I from, like the time I was 4, because of the things that happened to me, I never wished. I never wished for her. I've always wished for someone else. So it's really interesting in that because again, there goes that grief. I can't even grieve her because it's not something that I wanted. So
No.
it's this fairy tale of a woman that would have been in my life who, and I know every family is not not
No,
normal.
no.
I know that people say, "Oh, that's not, no one's family is normal." No, you're absolutely right. And I didn't expect perfection. I
You
just
just
wanted,
want a
yeah,
connection.
I wanted connection. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel wanted. I'll tell you, all the women who connected with me gave me the opportunity to feel seen, to feel heard, like I had a voice that I could use and have this courage. A teacher who made me feel wanted, a coach that helped me to feel like I mattered, a caseworker that loves me because she's still in my life from the time she was 14, unconditionally. And then, a teacher who, would sit and talk with me, who made me feel worthy of someone's time.
Mm.
All
No.
of these things are what I wanted from one person. I just wanted that. And so those are something simple, you would think. And it doesn't, again, have to be this perfect thing. But I think as a mom, those are things and qualities that you can give your kid, no matter what your crazy, you know, cousin, Jerry or something. You know what I mean? Everybody's got the crazies
Yeah,
in the
I
house.
do. You know, because I've seen
But
it from the other side, right?
yeah.
I, I have 2 girls, and listening to what you're saying right there, it kind of puts me in a perspective because I was not there.
Hmm.
Not that I didn't want to. My life
Yeah.
just said, I got something different from you. My life became this place of constant danger and chaos
Right.
where I had to learn how to survive, right?
Yeah.
And I knew from a very early age that I couldn't be around people that I loved because I knew what I was capable of doing. And I never wanted to put people that I loved in a situation to where my actions or my choices they would have to pay for.
Right.
And so I had to make decisions. And I tell people, look, I don't, I'm not going to I'm not going to dwell on what you call me.
Mm-hmm.
Call me a deadbeat. I may be, right? I'm not going to correct you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to correct you. I don't have time for it. So I let those stories just go on about them way, and there's a
Yeah.
sense of grief that comes along with that I
Sure.
never really talked about, because it's like, man, um, I wish I could have been,
Yeah.
but with all the bullet holes that I got in me, I'm glad that I didn't bring them in, because I was like, man, this is not no life,
Right.
and I knew, because I had my father, I had my mother, right, and they were wonderful when I
Mm-hmm.
was when I was coming up, but I lived a double life
Yep.
and no one knew, and I just, I didn't want to see my life spill over, um, and just have chaotic results. I
Yeah.
got a younger sister I love to death, man. That's my baby girl, my nieces and things like that, and I was just like, I couldn't do it. I always just preferred to be alone.
Yeah.
That I felt safer alone.
Well, you live in that, like, it's something that's ingrained in you,
Yeah.
and again, like, I wanted something so bad, but at the same time was terrified to have it because I didn't know how to live in that. Like, I only knew chaos.
Right, right.
It took me years into my adulthood because again, like I had kids. I had these two kids and I'm like, "Oh my God, how do I navigate this?" Again, that hurt, that pain as soon as I became a parent. It's like these different stages of your life,
Hmm.
that you were like, "Holy crap." And it took me a long time to do the thing like you did where I say, okay, I don't want them to be part of what my family was. I have to separate them and I have to do what I have to do. And so I lost everybody by coming out and talking about things. Um, it's just the way that it is. Um, but I want to go back to what you're talking about. And my father is, that's one of the things he had said. He was like, I was a deadbeat. I mean, he talked about the things that he was. And
Hmm.
again, that brings me to a level of respect there. Because I already had a crazy, chaotic, shitty life at home.
Right, right.
Adding him to it and his chaos and I understand, like, it was a better thing. It was best that it stayed separate. It was already hard enough. I didn't need the added whatever. But again, like when I got to be, an older teen and then into my adulthood, there, we did have a relationship. It's not a father daughter relationship. That ship has sailed. But
Mhm.
it's two people who really respect each other. And we've had our issues the last couple of years and it is what it is and that's okay. But there's you know again, I didn't grieve that. I didn't grieve the loss of him. I didn't grieve the whatever. I'm appreciative of what, having this respect now for one another, but that wasn't a part of me that ever grieved. um but yeah, I see where where you should be in someone's life or not. And I was
Right,
scared when I became a parent. I was terrified. I thought, how can I be something that I've never had before?
right,
Do you know what I
right.
mean? And again, like there's that every time something comes up, I am reminded of this hurt of not having someone to look back on and say, I wish I had that. I wish, I could do that, or call up and say, tell me what you did. How did you get through teenage years? God, they sucked. Um like uh and I have a son who has special needs, so the challenges are different, high functioning but wonderful. But my daughter, man, I would have loved a mom because I needed some guidance in that way. I navigated it, but it was hard. You know what I mean? It's a different, you hurt, you hurt, you hurt. Um, but I was determined not to have the cycle continue. So I did everything I could, reflecting back again, of these women who, helped me feel in certain ways. That's how I gave to my daughter. But each time I did that too, and this is something where I've talked privately with another friend of mine who um, similar background, but we walk two different lives, but we have an emotional connection, to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like people would say to you, give to them what you wanted to have for yourself. And I would get angry because I was jealous of that. And so
Okay.
even though I provided that,
Uh-huh.
it hurt every time I did it because I wish why didn't I have that? And the hurt and the hurt and the hurt and the hurt. So each level of their lives um, has brought on a different type of grief and hurt and pain because
Understood.
yeah,
Yeah.
and because so it's an ongoing thing. So um when we talked about talking about this subject, I said it's really difficult because um how do you grieve something you've never had? How do
Mm.
you grieve something that you'll never have? How do you process things when you don't have something to look back on? So again, like when my kids became of age and I'm dealing with the teenage years, like holy crap. It's frustrating that I couldn't look back on something that was, related to me and I could say, okay, well, this is what my mom did. Let me try this. I'll call up my mom. Let me try this. Even if my I have friends who, their parent died, but they feel the same way. Like I couldn't call, even if they didn't die, I couldn't call that person up, and say, hey, what happened? Because I know what happened in my life and I don't want to,
Right.
emulate that at all.
Right.
So yeah, there's all these hurts.
I understand. That's a lot of healing to go through as well, through all of those different hurts and
Yeah.
understanding what you need for that hurt and be able to nurture it, right?
Yeah.
Because every hurt is different. Every hurt is, I know it always feels the same, but there's
Yeah.
a difference in it, right? Because
Yeah.
of the individual, the situation, the culture, no matter, your personality, the different versions of you that you had to become in order to um grow into this world,
Hmm.
right? But then becoming a mother, all
Yeah.
those different things. Now, how did your home life affect your relationships with the other family members that you have, or was that existent?
So extended family, again, it was all secrets. So you
Mm,
put on a persona when you're on the outside that everything is okay at home. Whether or not they knew what was happening, I don't know. But I lived in a family where, um, yeah, a lot of people just didn't know, and if they did, they never said anything. I can
okay.
say that over the past couple of years, someone said to me that um, since they all left, like they just dropped me, I don't exist anymore, or whatever. It was that the excuse was, well, she was on drugs. It's not her fault. They gave an excuse for it. Um, so even if that relationship was rekindled, I'm going to have that issue, with them. But yeah, everything was swept under the rug. You learn how to um, portray something that is not real, like things that
Mm,
I wanted so
yeah.
badly on the outside of the house. I had to portray that it was good, but it
Wow.
wasn't.
You really were
So
living a double life,
I
though.
was.
You were living a double life. It kind of reminded me of the character on Batman, Two Face.
Uh-huh.
On
Yeah.
one end, he's like, I'm gonna flip the coin, and whatever the coin lands on, that's gonna be your judgment, right?
Right.
It is almost very similar because
Yeah.
on one end, you got the angry Denise that's out there like, I'm gonna flip this coin, and when it hits the ground, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth,
Sure.
and on the other side, here you are wanting this connection,
Yeah.
but you are getting it. You know what I'm saying? You're getting it in bits and pieces, and it's
Yes.
making you want more, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, listen to your story and following along with it. You've done an amazing job of becoming that person that you need,
Yeah.
not only
Yeah.
for yourself but for your children.
Right.
Because and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a side of you that's saying, I never want them to feel the way that I felt.
Oh, from day one, every thing that I did, now I was still afraid of I was afraid of my family. I knew that they would all leave, and I felt like I had to stay because I wanted my kids to have this extended family, everything like that. But it was apparent to me by the time my kids were about 7 and 5 and 7, 6 and 7, I was like, no, I can't do this because I don't want them to be part of that chaos. So it wasn't worth me to do that.
Right.
And so when I, even though I'd go back to when they were little, I always wanted to make sure of all these things. And here's an interesting thing, because you said that. When my daughter was 18, we were driving to New York. She wanted to have her birthday in New York. And I was like, okay, so it made a girl's day of it. And prior to that, I never told her about my growing up. She knew my family up until she was 7. But again, I shielded a lot of stuff.
Right.
But I told her as she got inquisitive, as she got older, and we had situations where my mother called social services and the Dr. Phil show and all this. And of course, like, I'm trying to figure out, okay, keeping her not knowing things, but how do you navigate that? But I told her when she was 18, she can ask me. And so we're driving up to New York, and I tell her what I was comfortable with. So not everything, just comfortable with. And in my story, I'm talking about my double life but I had these things at school, and this was great. And this teacher, and she actually knew some of them. So it was like, oh, she did this, she did that. I felt great. Da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was done talking, I said, I just wish I had a mom so I could be a better mom to you. And without hesitation, she leaned over and she was like, Mom, I love the way that they raised you, because I have always felt seen. I have always felt I had a voice. I've always felt I've been unconditionally loved, that I was wanted, that I matter, and I'm worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I gave to her the things that I had learned from these women, these feelings I had learned from these women, and I changed the narrative of what my whole story was prior. So it's giving my kids something I never realized I was being able to do, never knew I was doing it. And it became more and more clear about how these moments that these women shared with me unknowingly, none of them knew. I just told them, like, as this book came out, here you go. These were the things you connected with me and what it did for me.
Right.
And so I was able to give my kids and shelter my kids from the chaos that I had. And thank God for these women, because of them, I've been able to, be the mom that I wanted to have. And like my home, like that was the other thing too. My babysitter I went to her house. I always felt safe. Everything was safe. And that was the other thing. She was like, I've always felt safe with us. And so those are the things I wanted my kids to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to change the narrative of what could have been to what is.
Okay, definitely understood. Now, you mentioned in your book, do you have a copy of your book? Show people what your book looks like.
Of course, I don't have it down here.
See how you are? You know you're going to have this down here.
You know what? I did. I had it down here. I'll make my kid drive it down here. But yes, it's on Amazon. I mean, I'm sure I could pull it up on Amazon, and that's what I'm going to do.
Put it in there. You know what? Go to the chat. Go to the comment
Yeah.
section and put it in the comment section.
Okay.
So that way people know where to find it and what the title of it is. And if you can get a copy so you can show people what it looks like. So if they're looking at it, they know what they know what.
Well, this is what it looks like, just so you know.
That's
okay.
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And you could actually put into Google and it'll bring it up. How do I join the chat? I guess
so. You see up over in the corner where it says comments.
Yes.
Not the private chat, but the comments. Go ahead and put it in the comment section over there so people know what to look for.
Well, let me say, it's not letting me. It's not allowing me. Connect.
What?
It says connect with YouTube.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Will you put it in the chat?
I can do that. Yeah, I would do that.
And it's on my website as well. So my website's easy to remember. It's denisebard.com. And so that'll show you on there, and it'll bring you can get it in Kindle or in paperback.
And it's 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah, it's 30-second moments and the women who raised me.
You got to forgive me. My fingers are big, and I'm not
That's
a
okay. You put my website. If they click on my website, they can look at it on there. They'll see it. I have a link on there to them.
Okay, so I got it in there. I'm gonna make sure that people know where to. Oh, see that? Yep, see.
It's 30-second moments of the women who raised me.
All right. Well, it's in there now. We got it.
Yeah,
we got
thanks.
it up there.
Yeah,
I forgot that I got ons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got that. We got that in there.
You're welcome, Dan.
Dan, how you doing this morning, brother? Yeah. Hopefully you're enjoying the conversation and everything. If you have any questions for Denise or myself as we're having this conversation, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to get to them as we're going. And like I said, Denise is bringing a whole beautiful perspective of a different type of grief.
Yeah.
She's talking about grieving something that she's never had before, which was a mom.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting because you finding a tribe of individuals that have experienced something like that. And I know some people, it's really hard to fathom, right? Because, they have their parents there. They may not be the best, but they still have them there. And some people do have those great parents and things like that. And I think it's something that we learn over a period of time. It's passed down through us. And some of it we just kind of fall into, right?
Yeah.
So it's you found your tribe, you found your tribe. Now, what was the healing like?
I don't know that there is a healing, if I'm being quite honest. I don't know if you heal from something that you've never had because you have nothing to reflect back on.
Okay.
That's why I say Mother's Day is like the hardest, because a lot of people, and I know all of us, view things differently, but, I have friends who've lost their mom, but they share stories about the fun times. Like, oh, I miss this with my mom. I miss doing that with my mom. I miss that. I don't have that. Like, I don't have that to reflect back on. And because of that, there is a hard thing about healing. Again, it goes to, how do you heal from something you've never had before? I think as we get older, those of us who have been in this situation, I will say, connecting with these other women and men who have that relatability of that shared emotion. There is, I don't know if I would call it a healing, but there's something that puts you at somewhat of a peace because you're not alone. And that's kind of like why I really was excited to come on here, because it's a subject that's not really talked about ever, because it's an embarrassment. You know what I mean? How do you explain something like that? Because you feel like people are going to be like, oh, that's not grief. That's not grief. But yet it is. And so
it's just a different type of grief, right?
Correct.
It's just like you can grieve the loss of a job.
Yeah.
You can grieve the loss of a friendship. You can relationships, housing, a car. There's so many different variations of grief.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of hard to not say that that's not a that's not a form of grief, right?
Right, but not everybody is open to that. And then I will say this: being able to connect with these women who I have, when I have 6 people, like I'm only in connection, or maybe 8 people. I only have about 6 that I'm connected with, or 5 that I'm actually connected with, and I can say that we truly are friends. There's been, again, I don't know if I want to call it a healing, but there's something that lifts the weight off. Being able to, especially being able to share their impact in my life. there's something about that that makes the hurt a little bit better, that miss of a mom. I still miss, I'm still hurt that I didn't have one, but I'm also grateful that I had these women come in my life at the same time, at all these different times.
Right.
So there is a part being able to share that with them, um, has helped, has
Okay.
truly, truly helped. And it's something that, I encourage others who may have relatable, like, I don't know, experiences or connections of some sort to find the person and tell them, because there is some, yeah, I guess maybe that is part of a healing, to be able to open up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, hey, I just want you to know. Again, you still feel the pain of, like, I wish I
Right.
had somebody to call tomorrow and say happy Mother's Day. I wish I had somebody, to check on me and say, hey, how are you doing? And things like that. Those are the things you grieve too. It's when you don't have somebody who is thinking about you and, calls you and say, hey, I just want to check on you. Are you okay? But some of
Right.
these women I'm in contact with every day. At least the babysitter, I talk to her every day through playing Wordle and stuff like that, with her daughter. So we're in a group chat. So,
Yeah.
it's these connections that are formed and made, not the same, but there is kind of like a, maybe that is part of a healing. Maybe I, have to look at it that way, I suppose.
Well,
Um,
you've experienced great hurt, great pain,
mm,
and fortunately,
yeah.
through that becomes great healing, because and the reason being, I'll never take anything away from anyone. This is your journey.
Yeah.
And you have every right to label it the way that you want. Now, I'm just on the outside looking in and coming from
Observation.
a place, yeah,
Yeah.
and through great pain, and to become the amazing mom and woman that you are today, there has to be great healing, because
Yeah.
you got to learn how to have grace with yourself as you begin to maneuver into adulthood, into motherhood, into being a wife and having a home and becoming a speaker, writing a book. That's bravery.
Yeah.
Right? That's pure bravery.
Well,
So
yeah,
for me,
I will
I mean,
say
you may
that's a
not want
brave
to label it
thing.
that way. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's bravery, but that's
Yeah.
that's that's also a part of your healing, because now you're going, you know what? I have to get this out.
Yeah.
Not too many people have the courage to do that, right? There's people out there that have been in similar situations that you've been in, and unfortunately, they haven't figured out how to become unstuck, right?
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
haven't figured out that how not to become a victim. They haven't figured out how to move accordingly in their
Yeah.
in their own in their own world, right? And go and find that breath, find that extra step, to find their voice,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so, I mean, for me, I just label it. For me, it's like I see the great healing in personality and the person that you are, your characteristics, because you didn't have anyone to say, hey, that you had an example from, except for
Yeah.
those women that came apart. But you have different characteristics from all of these different people that you're like, you know what, I'm me now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say there's great healing in your journey, and I find that very, very inspiring.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You know, I find
It's
that very inspiring.
yeah, I think it does take a lot of courage to put yourself out there and share your story.
Hmm.
I have critics, and I knew I was going to have critics.
Of course.
Um, but at the same point, it has helped a little bit in the healing. It's given me control. Like you said, victim. I'm not a
Yeah,
victim. I'm not a
that's what I
victim.
mean. Like you,
When I was younger, I felt that way. But I heard a speaker say, um, victim to victor. You're not a victim, you're a
yeah, yeah.
victor. And
Well,
so that put a lot of things in perspective for me too. And that, yeah, I've um, couldn't, I never saw myself as being proud of myself. But now it's like, I'm proud. Part of why I wanted to write the book, part of why I wanted to find these women to say, hey, look, I've turned out great. I'm not that bad kid. I'm not the kid that continued a cycle of abuse, who continued the chaos of a family.
Right,
I
right,
am
exactly.
different. Like, I'm not the story that I was born into. I'm the story that I wrote for myself. And so there
I
is a
mean,
proudness in there,
yeah,
because it took a lot. And the
yeah,
courage is something, again, I'll go back to that counselor who helped me find that courage and helped me find that voice, because that courage and that voice has gotten me to where I am today. And it helps, that voice, that courage helped to have all the women that showed up after her fall into place because of that.
right. Now
And
that,
so,
you know, we have a common love for motivational speakers.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we do.
and it reminds me of I love Inky Johnson,
Oh
and
my
he has
gosh.
a
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
has a quote or saying, "Who are you in the times of adversity and challenge?" Because a
Hmm.
person isn't judged when things are going good, right? Because it's easy to have great morale when things are going good.
Yeah.
But who are you when you're getting told no in the world? Who are you when your life has fallen apart?
Hmm.
Who are you? And I pose that question to everyone out there who are searching and things like that, and your life is falling apart. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
I know, right? Um, my life has fallen apart many, many a times. And was I the best at all of them? No, no, I wasn't. It took me a little bit though. And finally, I just started to begin to understand that when my life is falling apart and these doors are closing, I let those doors close because those doors don't define me. The people who were there, they were just there. It's
Right.
time for them to move on. I'm totally fine with that. But who am I going to become? Am I going to become bitter, or am I going to become better? Am I going to become a victim or a victor?
Hmm.
I made a choice a long time ago after I figured out that I'm not a victim. I've enjoyed my time. I
Yeah.
appreciate that moments with these individuals. Like,
Hmm.
and that's what I mean. Like, they're just moments
Right.
that
Right.
show up. And just like the wind, they're gone.
Right. The
Who
good
are you when
moments
the
though
wind?
stay. The good moments stay. I will say that anytime I talk about those moments with those women, I literally, and I can't say it, and there's no word to put it in it. But if I think of those moments, I literally feel that feeling I got in that moment. And that is something that helps me to get to the next day and get to the next day.
Okay.
And I want to go back. You said about the quote with from Inky Johnson. Les Brown said, "Who would you be if you weren't afraid?"
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that itself was and is one of the things that really drove me to write the book, drove me to start using my voice. Now, obviously, back when I made the choices of cutting contact with my mother, I didn't have that quote, but when I reflect back on it, it was the best thing, because who would I be if I wasn't afraid? I'm me. Like, I lifted off the anxiety and that weight of a lot of things, lifted off, and then I became and discovered the free me. I don't know if that's a best way to put it, but I was free
I
to
love that.
feel the way that I wanted to feel.
Yeah, I
That's the
love
one
that.
thing. I felt the way that I wanted to feel. I was able to um, do the things that I knew were inside of me, were afraid to come out. Like, there's all these things and stuff. But yeah, I love Inky Johnson and Les Brown and Denzel
Yeah.
Washington too.
And so
So,
many, so many others, right?
oh
If we
yeah.
take in combination the things that we've learned through these silent mentors, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and how we carried them over and how we was able to read in between the lines and actually apply those things into our
Right.
lives, right? How did it change us? How did it mold us? Like I said, sometimes you have to, sometimes it's necessary. It's necessary to find people that inspire you
Oh yeah.
to do better. I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer. Look, I may not be able to come and and afford to come and see you, but if I can
Yeah.
find a video,
Yeah.
I will place myself in those rooms with you and
Yeah.
pretend that I'm in there and I'm listening to you. I'm inspired and all of these different things. Before we continue, I want to say to everybody over at LinkedIn, thank you guys for joining in. Hopefully, you guys are the enjoying the conversation that we're having. Grief and love. Thank you for the follow. If you guys, put those questions, comments in the comment section. We'll be sure to get back to you. And again, if you guys haven't already, do me a favor, head over to my YouTube channel, The Grief Let's Talk About It podcast, and hit that subscribe button for me. And I'm going to put Denise's website and information over here as well, so you guys can go and check out her website, but also to get her book.
Mm.
But we've been having this amazing conversation so far, and Denise is talking about, if you're just now joining in, she's talking about grieving something that you've never had, a mom, and how her book came about. 30 seconds moments, and the woman who raised her, and it's on Amazon, so please go check that out. But also check out her website, denisebard.com, and I'm put those in the comment section for you guys. But yeah, we're talking about motivational speakers that we've been inspired by, and just how it molded her, how she became the parent that she is, the woman that she is. And it's just truly, truly amazing. And coming from a fighter as well, I can definitely relate to all of those different things. You
Yeah.
guys can always check out the recording once it's done. It'll be up on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, but go check it out on YouTube, though. Do me that follow. Do me that solid. But now, Denise, like I said, it's truly amazing, right? When we laugh about these things now and go, you know what? I survived,
Yeah.
right? But you also said something very, very powerful. And I think it's something that people never really think about. You're free,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was asked this one time, what would my world look like without all of the misunderstandings? And I did not say that misunderstandings. I just simply said, I would be a free man.
Mm-hmm.
Because we live in a world where freedom is not free. We're not free to have our own thoughts, because when we have our own thoughts, somebody may criticize us. I really don't care, though, because the way that I look at life now is that um, who are you to tell me what I need to think?
Yeah.
Who are you to um, have an opinion about the way I live my life? Live your life.
Yeah, but that's hard to. It's hard to. We can say it. It's really hard to do it. The
This
fear
is
of
yeah.
failure is not something that I fear. The fear of judgment is what controls me most.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
it's
see. I
yeah,
understood that. I
yeah.
understood that. I
So
have no
it's
fear of any of that anymore. Right? I have
I'm
no
getting there. I am getting there. Again, because I'm able to talk about these things,
Mhm.
um, being able to share about the grief of not having a mom. Um, it's I'm not going to be afraid of being judged by that, because it was something that I've been afraid of being judged by. Um, but yeah, there is that, I'm working step by step to not care what others think, and just to be
Yeah.
able to. And there's something about that. I'll say this too. Being able to hear from other people who have been in relatable situations. You'll always hear me say relatable, because I will never say I completely understand. You'll never understand completely me. I will never understand completely you, but we have some relatable things. Our feelings could be very, very relatable. But being able to hear it from someone else so that you don't feel alone, helps you let go of that fear of judgment, and helps you allow you to be freer. and be okay with things and be able to
Yeah.
say, like, I would never have come on here and talked about the grief of not having a mom. I never would, because I was afraid of people going, saying the things that I've heard them say. That's ridiculous. You don't know grief. I mean, every little thing. But I heard, being able to share it with my friend Anne, um, having that connection like gave me the courage to be able to say out loud to more people. So that's why when, I said, what, have you ever talked about this kind of grief? It's something I've never heard outside of my conversation with my friend Anne. I mean, just a conversation. It wasn't like public. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. But you find a sense of freedom when you can find a relatability in someone else. Someone
Understood.
else's journey, you can find that relatability, and that kind of gives you the courage to open up as well.
Okay. Now, see, I understood that as well. You
Mhm.
know, I guess that's, again, for me, that's part of your healing journey, when you just don't care what people think. Like,
Yeah.
the way I've always looked at it, because I don't waste the time to talk negative about anyone or anyone
Mhm.
else's situation. I can respect it. I definitely can definitely respect it. Can I relate to it? It's not mine.
Right. It's
It's
not your
yours.
story. Yeah.
It's my job to hold space with you. It's
Yeah.
my job to walk with you when you need me the most, right? To be in the mud, to go, hey, maybe give you some words of inspiration and courage. Maybe you can grab onto a little bit of what I have, but far as trying to take I, no one lives rent free in my head. If you're going to live in my head, you're going to have to pay me. You're going to have to pay some rent.
Yeah.
But I don't allow people to do that. No matter the situation, no matter where I'm at in life, no matter who I know or things like that, um, you don't get to live rent free in my head.
Mhm.
That's my rule, because this is mine. This is mine up here, and my intellectual property is precious to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to bombard it with other people's opinions of me,
Yeah.
right? I love me enough, right? I love me, So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. Look, I love everybody equally till you give me a reason not to, and I'm still not going to stop loving you. I'm just not. I'm just going to love you from afar.
I am I mean, this is not relatable, but I guess it is. I said to my daughter once, and somebody said this, and I went, like, oh, that kind of makes sense. She's going through her teenage, angst. And I said, yeah, I'll say angst. She'll even say now, she'll say, man, I was, and I'm like, I know you were. But I said, I will always love you, but I will not always like you. And it's more of, I will not always like the decisions that you make, but I will
Mhm.
always love you. And
Understood.
so, yeah. And so that's kind of what made me think about, saying that, where it's, you're there. The rent free thing, so many people say that to me. And I have, um, there's once in a while where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I'm not going to allow it to happen. But then there's a lot of things going, I'm an overthinker. This is really hard to not allow something to be in my head, because I
Mhm.
am so much of an overthinker. It kills you that I'm an overthinker. And
Yeah,
those people who are overthinkers, we have a harder time not allowing people to rent space, because it's a constant cycle
right.
going into your head.
I think a lot of it is because you're very observant. Overthinkers are very observant. You could take something that someone says and listen to a conversation and dissect it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
overthinkers see through people's bullshit.
Yeah, we do.
See through people's bullshit. And I love that, right? Because of
Yeah.
the simple fact of, it's like playing chess.
Mm.
It's like playing chess with checker players. Those who play checkers are always looking for the way to crown. How many times can I jump across these individuals?
Hmm.
Right. And I look at the damage that they cause, the chaos in their paths. those who play chess, the overthinkers, we've already put 20 moves ahead. We've already anticipated which direction you're going to go in. We may not always understand what people's intentions are right off the bat.
Right.
But once we start to put those pieces and start to move the pawn here and, where you need to go over here in order to checkmate, right?
Mm.
And it's not a checkmate to do damage to anyone. It's a checkmate to say, hey, you didn't have to do that. But since you did, you have to be better at playing the game than me. Right? So to speak. And that's just an analogy that I've always used. It's like, come on, man, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You really don't, you don't have to try to cause damage because for one, I'm not going to let you do it.
Yeah.
I love me too much to let you do damage to me. I love you too much for you to put yourself in a situation to think that you need to do this to me.
Right.
So I'm going to love you. No matter what you do, I'm still going to love you.
But I won't always like you.
And I'm going to pour into you in hopes that you can see that the things that you're doing that you can possibly cause damage that you don't have to. I have no ill will towards you. Right? Yeah. But if you want to walk with me, and if you allow me to walk with you, I will. Because I want to show you that I'm not like those who have hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take something away from you. As a matter of fact, everything that I do, I'm trying to give something. I'm trying to give something to you so you don't have to go out there and search for it or think that, or try to group everybody in the same category. And I think as human beings, we can do that pretty good, right? We could definitely do that pretty good. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of forgiving and gratitude, patience, and appreciation, and accountability. Yeah. Because in order to get there, you have to first be a fool, because that's what wisdom comes from. A lot of people don't want to be the fool in order to get the wisdom. A lot of people don't want to become the dangerous individual to become a good individual. And so it's the yin and the yang, what I'm saying? You can't have one without the other. If you want something, you're going to have to go through something, and then you're going to have to become something in order to become something different. So it's a give and take in life.
Right.
In order to do those things. And you know what, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up because we've been talking and we can go on forever. I love talking with you.
Yeah, me too.
Just simply amazing. We're going to have to do this again. Now, with Mother's Day coming up,
yeah,
I've never been a mother. I did, my mother has passed away. And the only thing I can say to those out there going through the grieving process, surround yourself with people this Mother's Day and allow them to love you, please. Yeah. We need a lot more love in this world, but allow yourself to love you as well. And if you can leave the audience with something today to encourage them this Mother's Day, what would you give them?
Geez. I guess the first thing that comes to my head is that it's okay. It's okay the way you feel, because I think a lot of times we're expected to feel what other people think we should feel. So just, it's okay if you feel hurt, that's all right. And it's okay, if whatever it is that you're going through, it's okay the way you feel, because I think a lot of people will try to tell you should feel different ways, but I think being able to accept the way you feel is okay. Right. And I will say this, if you're in a situation like me, and I will leave this to wherever it goes, I have learned for myself to protect myself is that I turn off the internet. It's a wonderful thing to look at other people's stories and not, but it's a hurt. So you turn off the internet, be happy for them. That's fine. It's not like you're saying, I'm not happy with that. But do what's best for you. And if it means, turning off the TV and doing whatever, turning off the internet, because man, that makes you only see the great things in people's lives when you're looking through the screen. You don't see the other stuff. So
Yeah.
just, it's okay to turn things off. But again, most importantly, for me, giving advice is that it's okay to feel the way that you feel. Because I think I hate when people tell me that's not how you should feel about Mother's Day. That's not how you should feel. So that's just my thing to share, that it's okay, whatever way you feel.
And I love that because I totally agree. It's
Yeah.
yours. You feel it
Yeah.
the way that you need to. No one
Hmm.
has the right to tell you what's right or wrong because they're not you.
Right. And that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who feel the
Yeah,
same way. Like,
exactly. There's a
especially
lot of
like
people.
in my situation, there's not a lot of people to talk about it. And as soon as you can, and at least know that you're not alone in that thought process and whatnot, then I hope that that alleviates some of the weight that you feel on Mother's Day, because someone else is feeling the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Denise, thank you. Thank you for being on the show today. Everybody go check her out. Her website is denisebar.com. Her book is 30 Seconds, 30-Second Moments, and the Women Who Raised Her. And it's on Amazon. Please go check it out. And Denise, again, thank you for being on the show. For everybody who's been tuning in on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, thank you guys for tuning in. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, and I'm gonna mention it again. Um, Head over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. If you tuned in towards the end and you thought the conversation and you think the conversation is great, go back and check out the full episode. Right, you guys are going to be truly amazed. Um, for those out there celebrating Mother's Day this year or struggling through Mother's Day this year, always remember you're not alone. Please reach out. We always encourage that you surround yourself with people that's going to love you, be willing to receive that love this Mother's Day. And this is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And we're going to see you guys in the next episode. And you guys have a great one. Peace.
Bye.